So
I mean, you're like Madonna, but instead of one word, it's 2 letters.
it's the initials, right?
Right?
Okay, well, let's just say hypothetically that you walk through your single life as Heather Keller.
Oh,
Right.
See, and I was thinking the whole time when I heard HK, I was thinking Hashemite Kingdom.
Oh, okay, that's a new one.
So, do you know the Hashemite Kingdom?
Not at all.
So, in the country of Jordan, the Hashemite family started ruling Jordan in 1920s, and that's their family name.
Oh, I love that.
So, the country of Jordan is often known as the Hashemite Kingdom, but then for short, they use HK.
Okay, well, that's way more highbrow than my answer, which is that I share initials by choice with Heidi Klum, Hello Kitty. so that's really the appeal of it for me.
So you haven't really gone by HK all your life then?
No, becoming Heather Keller Giltner was just not, I couldn't stick the landing on that, and neither could students. So I can't tell you how many papers I grade that are for Professor Helen Keller. Professor, I mean, how many different ways can somebody misspell Giltner?
Renfro. How do you spell that?
Yeah.
R-E-N-F-R-O.
That's it.
Oh.
Oh.
So I'm in Louisiana, I spelled R-E-N-F-R-E-A-U-X.
Yes, Renfro.
And they, no questions whatsoever asked at all, right?
Is that with the E-A-U-X, or is that the O-E or the O?
The other thing I know a little bit about you is that your background is in PR.
Yes.
As in public relations.
Correct.
Not marketing.
Not marketing. Do you want to loop the viewers in on why that's funny?
Yeah. So we were in a meeting once, and I said off the cuff something we were working on curriculum, PR marketing. No, it's the same thing. Don't worry about it. Which I knew it wasn't, but I was just trying to get us to move along. But I did, and then after I thought it, I was like, yeah, she's gonna point that out, and that was okay. It probably needed to be, but
yeah. So, and it's not to be disparaging of all of our friends and colleagues in marketing, because marketing is really important, but it is different from public relations, and public relations is one of my favorite subjects to teach. And so when we started conversations and got in meetings about curricular expansion that would possibly include that, I thought, oh yeah, because that's really the only piece of this teaching pie that is left for me to complete. I get to teach all of the subjects that I really, really like, because I'm teaching English and communication here for us. But to be able to fold in public relations, because it is the 24-hour news cycle, and just whatever is happening in pop culture and whatever is just running rampant through the media is always just a quick grab that you can make for great classroom discussions, great classroom activities. And so PR is capital F fun to teach. And then probably because it's a good career to get into, and a lot of people don't know about it. Right. And I think a lot of people think that communication careers are driven exclusively by extroverts, and that's just simply not true.
That's interesting, because I've often wondered or thought about that too. So explain to me a little bit more about that, because I think most people would agree that you do have to be outgoing. You have to be willing to get up in front of a big crowd and talk and be able to just speak off the cuff. But is that really the case?
Yeah, I think that there's this misnomer that PR professionals are spin doctors, and that to be a good one, you've got to be constantly camera ready. You got to be eager and enthusiastic about working a room. And those are good, valuable skills, not just in PR, but for a lot of careers. But the schmooze factor is really not what makes a good PR professional today. Now, communication professionals really are served well by, you're going to love this, data.
Data.
And that's not surprising to you.
Too.
Yes.
Not to say that they're the same. I won't make that mistake.
But different kinds of data. But a Google Analytics certificate alongside a new grad who had excellent experience in developing skills in the communication field, unstoppable. But data and data analytics is something that a lot of students wouldn't have thought is a really important part of communication. As a math dork, as a data dork, I'm constantly telling comm students, it's not just about, do you look great on camera? And it's really not just about, are you able to work a room? Data analytics is really driving how we build relationships and how we communicate to public. Sure. And that's the backbone of PR. Now that your iPhone 13, 14 can do so much technically of what really used to be developing a strong skill set. I don't have to have Photoshop experience. I don't have to have, using iMovie, you can teach yourself how to do these things. So the technology is so much more accessible with a lower level of technical skill that now the area we're expanding and challenging new grads is, can you make sense of data and how it makes people behave and think and make decisions? And that's really kind of a fun sociology hook. So
true.
Yeah.
And I think, while the technology has become more prevalent and allows greater access, there's still a professional aspect to understanding that technology, depending on the platform and the delivery method and what you're going to use it, right?
Right.
And I think that's where we really have to help our students understand, you can do a lot of great things with your iPhone, but really to go to that next level, it still takes a commitment to understand and learning the technology.
Yes. Yeah. And that the technology has never been so close and so accessible, but there is still a discipline in using it. And I think that's maybe kind of a chasm where we're misfiring with students.
I think so too.
Is the finesse. That's sort of the cherry on top of that skill set, is really being able to direct professionally through those applications.
I think that, and you know this as well, the writing piece, right?
Right. I know.
It's so critical. The storyboarding and then the script writing, the improv, that's one thing, but still the ability to write out clearly what's going to take place in the message that you're trying to transpire.
I think a lot of people would look at a message and say, close enough, or they'll get it. In these disciplines, when you're paying for every word, every character in your ad space, in your ad buys, you need to maximize high impact language and to think about it the way that your audience thinks about it. What are the connotations behind these words and phrases that we use? And what does that evoke in a potential buyer or client or someone that we want to build a relationship with? And thinking about words and writing at that meta level, it takes a different level of sort of commitment to getting it right and saying exactly what you mean to say. It's hard.
Yeah. So how then, thinking about the future PR or marketing professionals that are sitting in your classroom, how do you reach out and engage them to understand the importance of that when conceptually they don't really think it is at that point in time?
Yeah, I like that. I think what a communications student right now would benefit from sort of just internalizing and keeping front of mind in all of their classes is that you are going after a moving target. There's going to be some new technology that you need to learn, some new platform that you need to incorporate into your day-to-day operations. And it's about moving with the speed of change. And that will be, I think, not just for comm majors, but for really all of our students. That will be the challenge of their professional lives. Yeah. And so curricularly, are we confident that what we're laying out at the base of that skill pyramid, is it recession-proof? Is it un-AIable? And I mean, that's at the one hand, the thrill of teaching, the thrill of being in the middle of decision-making in higher ed, and also completely terrifying because the question marks are more numerous and so much bigger than they've ever been. The pushback from students of like, what am I really getting out of this? But you think about a lot of those baseline skills draw on empathy, critical thinking, problem solving, relational communication between people.
Yeah, cultural understanding.
Yeah. Well, and you're an emotional intelligence guy, so I'm looking at the bookshelf. So maybe that's a good pivot point into something a little less abstract, a little more specific. What's the value that you see in cultivating an emotionally intelligent student?
That's really important. And it's interesting in a lot of ways because we really don't teach it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's if you were, and I can't say it John Wood, but in previous colleges that I worked at, you might find it somewhere in the business curriculum.
Yeah.
If you had a business instructor in management or leadership that got
somebody that loved those leadership books.
You might find it in a sociology or a psychology, right, where they had got into it from the personality perspective of it as well. But really from a pure functional standpoint, I mean, it really touches almost every area of a person's life. And honestly, I got into it from a leadership perspective because, I took the test and I was like, well, you got a lot of work to do. I took Daniel Goleman's emotional EQ or your emotionally quotient or EI, emotional intelligence quiz. And I found out that I had some work to do. This is a long time ago. But as I realized you can improve things, and I think relying on my anthropologist background and understanding cultural interactions to not necessarily just react from your beliefs, but to stop and consider other person's beliefs.
Yeah.
And that really is emotional intelligence when you think about it.
Yeah.
Right? And to assess the situation. And then as I began to manage people, I found individuals who were very empathetic, right? Who maybe even had good organizational skills, had maybe even vision and creativity, hallmarks of great leaders. But when it came to interacting with their employees, they just would lose their temper, would get so upset when things didn't go the way they want, and didn't really have the patience. And so I started to work with them using emotional intelligence, much like I had used it for myself. And lo and behold, many of them, would quickly catch on really quick. It was like, aha. Yeah. And I like it because it is a skill that you can progress in. You can work on it and get better at it.
Yeah.
And I also think that's probably not one that you ever perfect.
It's funny because I had a student in speech class yesterday who they were giving impromptu speeches early in the week. And what she contributed in her impromptu remarks, she talked about connecting the value of wanting people to feel seen and recognized. And I thought it was really interesting and really effective for a speaker to get into notes talking about the value first. And then in a later part of the speech, she transitioned into, and that's why I'm interested in a career in law enforcement, because I hope that she gave examples of different scenarios where she would be acting as an agent in law enforcement. But it really made me think about not specifically the emotional intelligence component, but connecting values with career pathways. And I was like, the teacher in me is just love that.
Yeah.
And then also because I know the student, this is the second time I've had her in class, that I think, yeah, I see that. I could see being pulled over and having a communication style that's not aggressive, but assertive and authoritative. But then also having those same communication skills sharpened so that when you need to de-escalate and when you need to manage a situation, that there's a lot that happens there. It
is truly one of the most relational fields and dealing with interpersonal communication that I'm aware of in many ways.
But I think that's a part of it that may not be intuitive for a lot of students, that tracing it back to values.
It's not.
Yeah. Say more about that.
And I think we don't do a very good job of putting that in place for them always. For example, I used to teach a class, this first year experience, or, I call it College 101 or Introduction to College. A lot of them knew what they wanted. I want to be a nurse, right? But then how did that personality line up, right? And how does that career aptitude test line up? If those line up with being a nurse, great. You've confirmed it. You should feel stronger about that now.
Yeah.
If they don't, let's talk about that. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't be a nurse or you can't be a nurse.
Yeah.
But what are some of the things that might be challenges for you to be a nurse, right?
I think that students might need more help and more sort of guidance.
They need more information up front when they're making that decision about what those careers go into. So I'm going to be an English major. Okay. But they also need to know, what does that mean for employability?
Yes. There are classes that you can take that even if you change your major, will still have value and will still be part of the fabric of the student that you are becoming and you're authoring along in this process. There's still value there. You're not one bad move away from something terrible, awful happening. You can fail a course, you can come back, you can change tracks, you can take a different approach. There's lots of ways.
But what they can't do is give up.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to play a better role, or a more invasive role, or a more supportive role.
The more quickly we can just dial into the most authentic versions of ourselves and be that and model that without apology, the faster we can get to that real work that we want to do together, which is, where does this class plug in for you? And if you're not sure about that, we should dialogue that together so that we make meaning of this experience that you are paying for, that you are taking on debt at the current moment for. Let's make sure that this is the experience that you want and need it to be.
Yeah, I think the authenticity point that you said there is key. It's critical. And I also think that the students respond when the relationship gets to a point where they understand that the criticism is not really criticism, right? But when it just comes off as, I'm never going to be able to succeed at this, right? Well, no. We're saying you are succeeding at this, but this is how you become more successful at this.
And I think that feels different to students. I think that doesn't feel like criticism. That feels like coaching. And I think in a lot of ways, good teaching is good coaching.
That's what it is.
Yeah, and good management of people. Coaching.
It is.
What I've started to bring into the classroom dialogue about why are we doing it this way and why am I so insistent on these things that rub right up against social media use, technology, AI stuff. When we bring those things into the classroom, I think that there is a unique generational challenge that I don't understand, that you don't understand, that they are living with. And I think, and this sounds dramatic, but the way that I talk about it in class is this will be one of the challenges of your entire generation's lifetime, is that the way that our technology has evolved and the speed at which that has occurred is creating this new cranial challenge for you are the recipient of so much information in the advertising that you view, in the messages that you receive, the scrolling that you do. When we think about generationally, the way that information has just amplified and really exponentially grown. We live in an information and a data age. And what we see in students that we think is alarming behavior that relates to social media, yes, it's happening. And yes, it's alarming. But I think that the root problem of that is just we are humans encountering an untold level of information and just not sure what to do with it yet.
We've never had a socialization process like this before.
Yes.
Right? And we're really just now at a point where we can start to look at the early components to it and understand the effects.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where it's going to become pivotal for higher education to play a role in that. Both explaining those effects and the causes, but also changing the way that we teach to embrace it, if you will, because if we choose to ignore it, right, we have a whole generation of students that will choose to ignore us.
Yeah. I also talk about what are my habits for being a good consumer of news, and where do I get my information, and how much is enough, but not too much. And these, I think, are good conversations to have in a spirit of transparency with students, because the real root problem is there's so much information coming at me from all of these sources. I don't know that there's a control valve anywhere.
Right.
And you're challenging me to navigate within this successfully. But neither of us really fully understand what's even happening here. It's not just your scrolling. I know what those alerts look like when you've been on TikTok for 90 minutes and it gives you the alert of like, whoa, girl, you think about a snack or a break or something? And I just...
You're like, no, I haven't thought of that, actually.
Yeah, Netflix asks you, like, are you still watching? Yes, I'm still watching. And I gave you my $9.99 this month, and I'll watch as much as I want. But...
Well, I'm sure some people are going to watch this, and they're going to come out and says, President Renfro thinks we should all put our lectures on TikTok, and we should be the TikTok teaching generation.
No.
And I think there's some merit to it, right? What I'm really suggesting in higher education is we have to take the higher road and figure out how to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
I'm not totally suggesting we go 100%, but we have to figure out, we have to understand it, right? In order to be effective at disseminating the information.
Yeah.
And that means breaking from that traditional format.
That's exactly it.
And so, but for me, it's not about just picking and choosing. It's about, as an organization and institution, we figure out the ways that we need to change or adapt to better suit our students. I think learning should be fun, and therefore I think you probably have that philosophy too.
Yeah.
I've walked by your class a time or two, and they look like they're having fun.
We're a rowdy bunch.
Good.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with
I don't make a great neighbor classroom-wise.
Well, sometimes that's the way it works.
It's an educational byproduct.
So I've taught next to a few teachers like that. We always just made it a challenge to outdo each other.
That's it. Yeah. You want an equally noisy neighbor.
Yeah. You think you're loud? Watch this one. So
give me some advice for how you like to work with change-resistant people.
Well, first of all, I like to hear why, because sometimes, and I think that's important. I said that earlier in this conversation. I don't like to change for the sake of change. I like to change for the sake of improvement.
Yeah.
Right. And making things better. So the first thing I like to do is hear why. why they don't want to change. And sometimes there's good reason there, you know. What's not a good reason is that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
Right? But also sometimes the late adopters to change actually help reform the change better.
Yeah.
Because they stop those of us who might rush in and try something right off the bat with no fear of failure.
Yeah.
Right? Because failure is just learning how to do it better the next time.
Right.
Right? But they may slow us down a little bit and actually make us more successful on that first out of the gate or that second out of the gate with a little bit of improvement.
Yeah.
So I really like to pause, listen to what they have to say.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, in areas where we really need to change that impact student success, we have to do it. It's an obligation to our students. And so we have to look at ways to improve the student experience. As
a change positive person, what's the most exciting corner of
CPP? Change positive person.
Let's TM it right now. It is now our intellectual property. We own it. Change positive people. So as a change positive person, as a CPP, Dr. Renfro, tell us, what are the corners of higher ed that you are like, can't wait for this change. I can't wait for us to do this better. And then I also want the rose and the thorn. So what's a part of higher ed that you're like, I don't even know how this is going to work out. How's this going to pan out?
I think the thing that I'm excited about, one is some of the models that are going on in higher education, community college in particular, because that's really my area of expertise. So in particular, AACC's guided pathways, which is really not new. In fact, it's, you know, probably close to 10 years old now.
Yeah.
And some of the things I said about earlier about helping students find their way towards a career path earlier. So that's one of the things that I'm excited about, because it wasn't something that we focused on early on. So when I started out, we just focused on how many students you could get, not how many students you could graduate.
Yeah.
And now we have to focus on both at the community college. It really is about both of those things. Because if they're just coming to us and not fulfilling their hopes and dreams, we're really not fulfilling our mission.
Yeah.
The food insecurity, housing insecurity are two of the largest ones.
Yeah.
We're seeing some of the best research that we've ever seen in that area to demonstrate that those are true issues that maybe 20 years ago when I started, we didn't even think about. People being food insecure or not having a place to live. Right. When I started in higher education, that just was a thought that crossed our mind.
Absolutely. And I think all corners of education, K-12, public, private, four-year, community college, I think we're all going to have to really hit that one head on, because I think it is our biggest limiting factor. The most skilled, intrusive advisors, the best career coaching resources that we can implement are so easily eclipsed when you have a student with a stomach that just won't stop growling in class, that they can't focus, that they're not sleeping, that they've got all these other concerns. And it's sad to them that they're investing in an experience that they can't capitalize on.
Right.
And for an instructor to be aware that, you know, this is a student that if their circumstances were different would just be hitting it out of the park every time. But it's the two jobs that they have and the unreliable childcare options, and you know, one workplace injury away from. I mean, I can't compete with that. But I think it's good for everyone in higher ed to be able to make these handoffs to resources and to know about these resources, because that's easy when those resources are available and plugged in. And if it's as simple as me walking a student to the counselor's office to make their first appointment or whatever that is, but it's so doable. And the outcome from doing, like, I think that once we start making those handoffs through resources, we're going to be like, oh, guys, we should have done this so much. Like, we
just didn't think of it. I think everybody has the best interests of their students at heart, and everybody cares. It's just changing that culture to truly understand what those barriers are.
Yeah.
You know, and we started with developmental education in community college, right? We knew that learning was the biggest barrier that they had, right? They came to us that it's 67, 75% of them needed developmental courses in reading, writing, and math. And what did we do? We just stuck them in reading, writing, and math. And we didn't really ask, why weren't they successful in reading, writing, and math the first time?
Yeah.
You know, and now we started to do that. Now we started to look at how we contextualize math. And maybe not everybody needs college algebra, and maybe not everybody needs stats.
Right.
What is the math class that they really need in that career pathway to be successful?
Yep.
And then once you have relevance to that math, right, that math phobia becomes much easier to conquer.
There you go.
So, well, this has been a lot of fun.
For me too.
I've really enjoyed getting to know HK better. So yeah, I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. But you know what I want to say most importantly is thanks for everything that you do for your students. I'm constantly hearing great things. The students are telling me that, other faculty, other staff are telling me that. And like I said, when I walk by your class and it's pretty rambunctious, I can tell.
Yeah.
Everybody's learning in there, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, and let's rope that back to career pathways, because for me, teaching is a calling. And having the assurance in a bigger scheme of things that this is part of my purpose and this is an intentional part of a skill set that I get to use in this life, that there's just something that comes to a person that feels really powerful when they're able to use their vocation in a way that feels like it was intended to be this way. And that's really what we want for all of our students. It may not be teaching.
And our faculty.
Yeah. I want my students to be the best law enforcement agents that they could be, the best K-12 teachers that they can be, the best agriculture professionals that they can be. Like, that's what I want for them. And because I get to experience my lived professional life, feeling like there is alignment between skills and passions. And because I found that and because I can use it, it alchemizes. It's a joy to do this work. But I also want everybody to know that, and this could be you too. This could be your vocation.
Right.
And your vocational choices can give you the same sense of joy. Well, let's keep being change positive people. CPPs, the
and
original.
authenticity.
There we go. All right. So let's keep it real. Let's keep it change positive. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Uh-huh.